There we go. Sorry. Welcome back. Another election night at Cannes, and this was an early one. Within about 2 seconds, every network and every tabulating agency called the South Carolina Democratic primary for Joe Biden. So you didn't have to wait long to know the result there. And if you'll just excuse me for a moment, because I hyped up this stream on Twitter, I am going to tweet it out, which I don't always do. So hello to all the Twitter warriors who may or may not be filtering into this chat. Victory announcement. The latest figure, as far as I can see, is with 96% reporting. Biden has won an approximately 29 percentage point victory. That's a thumping. And I know I'm not going to have a whole lot of Biden supporters in this live chat or watching this stream or seeing this video after it is published, but put yourself in the shoes of a person who does support Biden. At least try to do this. Try to separate your own personal preferences and candidate allegiances from just sort of an impartial assessment here. And you had your candidate essentially written off. He definitely did underperform in the first 2 states, although he didn't do terribly in Nevada. But no question, poor performances in Iowa and New Hampshire. The media had basically said that that's the end of close the curtains on Joe. His time has passed. And then the polls seemed to tighten somewhat in South Carolina. There were a couple that showed over Bernie. And what happens? He wins by far the biggest landslide of the primary cycle up to this point. He has significantly cut into the delegate lead of Bernie. And he won basically in every meaningful category in South Carolina. Now, I shouldn't say every meaningful category, because if you break it down by age, as usual, Bernie did better. But some of these statistics are pretty jarring in terms of Biden's performance. Number one, and I wrote about this briefly for a sort of short reaction piece that I did at The Spectator, which I will link to. But Biden did particularly well among voters who never attended college. And I will just pull up the precise figures for you here because they are rather illuminating. Among voters who never attended college, Biden wins 58%. And that's his best demographic if you break it down by educational attainment. So Biden's core support base are people who never interfaced at all with the higher education system. And if you want to understand why, if you consume news, political news in particular, through social media, through online media, if you want to understand why the Biden support out there in the country was never quite reflected in those venues, I'm not talking about cable news, leave that aside. I'm talking about the place where I live in most of the time, which is online news and commentary and social media and YouTube, etc. You're just almost never going to find vocal Biden supporters in those precincts. Like, this campaign's been going on for about a year, And can you name me somebody who's like a prominent Twitter personality or a prominent YouTube personality who's stridently pro-Biden? Probably not. And if you can name such a person, let me know, because I'm intrigued to find out more about him or her. They just don't really exist. So the key segment of the Biden support base in South Carolina, voters who never attended college, skewing older, skewing black, but not limited to black voters. Biden also won white voters by a double-digit margin in South Carolina. So don't come at me with these racial reductionist takes. Yeah, he overperformed with black voters, but he also won white voters. So you got to contend with that as well. But the point is that across racial lines, if he's winning overwhelmingly among Southern voters who never attended college, those people have no place at all in the online media sphere. You don't hear from them. The people who run the online political media, whether we're talking about social media or people at big platforms or magazines and websites and newspapers, all of those people, or virtually all of them, graduated from college. Not just graduated from college. It's not like they went to some technical school. The majority of them, I would even say the vast majority, graduated from prestigious schools, liberal arts schools, high-profile universities. And within their peer groups, you're going to find almost nobody who supports Biden. And I'm sort of narrowing this group to a very small sliver of the population who are the people who run the online political media. Right? So those are people, I would say, that you could call them between the ages of 25 and 45 approximately. You know, these are sort of rough estimates. But among, let's say, people who are involved in running online political media between the ages of 25 and 45, do you think those people have anybody in their immediate peer group or in their social networks who are stalwart pro-Biden people in the context of a Democratic primary? No. You're going to have a segment of Bernie people, and then, in my experience, it tends to be Bernie, Warren, and Pete, with maybe some oddballs thrown in. But, the anti-Bernie people in that narrow cohort are not going to be Biden people. They're going to be Pete or Warren people. So, of course, that's going to distort and skew the coverage of Biden that exists within the online media landscape. And I'm not saying this as a normative defense of Biden. I'm not in favor of Biden, but I am in favor of accurately portraying the nature of the American electoral landscape. Because if you fail to do that, you fail to accurately comprehend what is going on with U.S. politics. That was a big reason why there was such a systemic failure in the coverage of Trump. Now, it's not perfectly analogous to the Biden situation, but there are some parallels in the sense that the beating heart of the Trump support base in the Republican primaries and then in the general election was never represented in the elite media spheres. And the same goes with Biden. I would say that if we're limiting it to online media, there is a far more prominent pro-Bernie contingent than a pro-Biden contingent, of which there's almost none. So that's something you have to bear in mind as you're assessing these things. Because, my sort of guiding ethos when I'm talking about political events, elections, etc., is to, on the one hand, come up with my own values and judgments and opinions based on my independent analysis of the facts before me. So if you're watching the stream, you know that I'm generally supportive of Bernie and Tulsi. No secret there. And I'll happily explain to you the reasons why. But I would hope I would I could at least strive to separate that from understanding why Biden might win such a rousing victory in South Carolina. That's the more journalistic impulse that I have. Everything isn't always about my own personal preferences and trying to project them onto the electorate. If that's what you do, that's a recipe for analytical failure. So, yes, this is a significant victory for Biden because of the disadvantage he has in the total dearth of online media support. That's sort of a small factor, but it is a factor. Other factors which underscore the significance of this victory for Biden include the fact that he's run just a generally poor campaign, the fact that he has so far not really consolidated as much of the Democratic Party institutional support as you might have expected for a former vice president. So he doesn't have a huge amount of high-profile endorsements from these legacy Democratic Party figures. Yes, he has some, like a John Kerry, etc., but not enough to be an overwhelming behemoth. Like, he never approached Hillary Clinton levels from 2016 when basically the entire advantage. But you might see a little bit more of that now. I mean, one of the big reasons why seemingly that Biden won is because he got a crucial endorsement at the last minute from Jim Clyburn. Now, Jim Clyburn is in an amazingly unique situation because for the most part, an elected official endorsing a presidential candidate doesn't have any effect really on voter behavior. It's worth keeping track of those endorsements because it gives you insight into the machinations of the party brass. And there's sort of like this shadow primary that happens in terms of the elected officials and the kind of the DNC apparatchiks and others sorting themselves in alliance with this or that candidate. But rarely do those endorsements actually make a difference in terms of voter behavior. Clyburn is an exception. Clearly, his endorsement did make a significant difference. He's widely regarded as the grand poobah of South Carolina Democratic politics. He's the most prominent, or at least the most powerful, black elected official in the federal government. And everybody sort of supplicates before him if they want to be viable in the South Carolina Democratic primary. I was in South Carolina for his, world famous fish fry over the summer. And really, I mean, he had the world on a string. I mean, you almost can't imagine a position for somebody to be in that is more conducive to just constant sucking up and almost mythologizing than Clyburn. Clyburn really is somebody who can seemingly just pull a lever and he can dictate the winner of a primary. And that's almost an anachronism in contemporary politics where the power of parties is progressively diminished. But because of the peculiarities of the South Carolina Democratic electorate, which is a little bit more monolithic than you're going to find elsewhere in the country, and I'm not even saying monolithic because of the black vote, although that's a factor. Monolithic just because that in the deep South or in the mid South, where Republicans virtually win almost the entire time statewide, the Democratic electorates, consolidate and homogenize amongst themselves in a way that you're not going to see replicated like in California or even in Nevada or elsewhere. The South has a unique way of sort of making coherent the Democratic electorate, making uniform the Democratic electorate. That's just not how it works elsewhere. So that's why Clyburn's power was so pronounced. And would Biden have won South Carolina anyway without the endorsement? Probably. But, in these primaries, many people that you talk to do not make up their minds until the very last minute, sometimes until they go literally into the voting booth. Yeah, it's going to have an impact, in particular in South Carolina. So that's why Biden brought Clyburn up on stage at the victory speech tonight. It's why he's going to butter him up till the end of time now. I wouldn't, you should probably expect Biden, if he were to somehow win the presidency, which of course is nowhere near a foregone conclusion, but say that were to happen, Clyburn is going to be, Clyburn might as well just be given a suite in the White House. Maybe he'll put him on the $10 bill. Maybe he'll erect a monument to him on the National Mall. Clyburn is going to be, forever in the hearts of Joe Biden and the rest of the Biden family, because it's one of the vanishingly few endorsements that actually does make a tangible difference on voter behavior, which is sort of interesting because, the era of the party bosses is largely a thing of the past. Like, you can't go to New York City anymore, court the head of the local county party, like in Kings County, for example, and then just expect to win a presidential primary so much anymore. But again, Clyburn is an exception, and that's why it's actually pretty interesting. Now, I know I hyped that I may or may not perform the back that ass up dance on this live stream, but the criteria that I'd set forth for the circumstances where I would do the back that ass up dance is if Tom Steyer finished below 10%. And I'm looking at the results now, and sadly, Tom Steyer is currently at 11%. So you missed me backing that ass up by a mere 1 percentage point. However, I am tempted to back that ass up anyway, because Tom Steyer has thankfully ended his ridiculous campaign tonight after spending millions upon millions of dollars in South Carolina, flooding it with ads, just saturating the entire media market there months and months before any candidate was really spending meaningfully in the state. Tom Steyer even went so far as to use his family foundation to pay for church renovations in South Carolina. So he was just buying people off. He was performing a mini Bloomberg, which is funny because the very apt Trump nickname for Bloomberg is Mini Mike. But Tom Steyer is even more mini than Mike. Tom Steyer did a mini Mike in South Carolina, and it did not really bear all that much fruit. He got 0 delegates, and his campaign is now over. And the one sort of memento that he has really from the campaign is that he went on stage last night at some event with, hip hop artists. I guess Juvenile is the name of the guy who performs the Back That Ass Up song. I obviously am familiar with that song, and I'm sure I probably even genuinely did the Back That Ass Up song. I guess it's actually called Back That Thang Up. And the uncensored version is Back That As Up, A-Z-Z, instead of ass. So I extend my sincere gratitude to Tom Steyer for causing me to research and clarify my understanding of the Back That Ass Up song. And I'm glad Tom was able to back that ass up himself on the stage prior to the primary election. But you know what? If that's the cherished memory that he'll take away from this process, more power to you, Tom. I'm always going to resent the fact that he committed what I regard to be fraud, in that in the fall of 2017, Tom Steyer started this Need to Impeach organization, which was essentially just a front for data collection and marketing of himself that would serve as a precursor to the presidential campaign that he actually launched quite late. He launched it in July of this year. But that was fine for his purposes because he didn't need to collect the data for the 6 months that the other candidates were. He had already been doing it with this phony impeachment advocacy organization where he's saying to Democrats, oh, sign up, give me your email address and your phone number, and you'll help get Trump impeached. And sure enough, the Tom Steyer campaign then repurposed all that data for his presidential ambitions. And I regard that to be a form of fraud. It might not be illegal, but adorable that you managed to manufacture these cutesy memes style moments with Bernie where you're dancing together to gospel music on a stage in South Carolina, or you try to get involved in the dispute that Bernie and Warren had on the debate stage where Steyer's awkwardly looming behind them. Anybody who participated in those meme moments, I think is just a total sucker because I have zero sympathy at all for Tom Steyer. No redeeming qualities in my view. So there you have it. What else? You know what? For the Bernie people out there, I just don't think it's necessary to try to furiously spin this. Obviously, Bernie did not do particularly well. I think he did come in second place, but his total percentage of the vote appears to be 19.9%, which is less than half of Biden. It's more like 40% or something of Biden's total. So it's a rout. It's a blowout. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So just accept that and move on instead of going into this furious spin mode that the Bernie supporters mock and ridicule when the media does it to him. So, if you were one of the people who was rightly complaining about the spin that was done about Nevada, where, Bernie won essentially a blowout victory, but they were saying, oh, he didn't get a majority of the vote or whatever. It's just useless. Biden did win a fairly triumphant victory, and it's all the more triumphant because, again, his cognitive faculties are clearly declining. He has not run a well-oiled campaign in the slightest. He, like I mentioned before, has largely failed to consolidate the level of establishment support that you might expect for a vice president who served alongside an extremely popular Democratic president for 8 years, who is still beloved in the party. And on top of that, the corruption problems in Biden's family were at the center of a months-long impeachment melodrama that made the entire country aware of Hunter Biden's seat on an energy company in Ukraine and Joe Biden acquiescing to that, which obviously is a form of political graft. So on paper, there were plenty of factors which would have argued against Biden ever winning any primary contest. But he did, and he did by a walloping margin. So what's the point in denying that? It doesn't mean that Bernie's not going to be the nominee. It doesn't mean that Super Tuesday is not going to result in a commanding delegate lead for Bernie, which it still may. Although, I mean, if this result is any indication, there are signs now that Biden is, I don't want to say surging because it's a pundit cliche, but he's at least trending upward. So who knows what that might portend. I think Bernie's still likely to win California by a large margin, which, if that happens, I mean, that's sort of enough for Bernie just because it's such a massive delegate state. In a way, I don't really like the fact that we have two of the biggest states in the country voting on the same day on the Super Tuesday, because I don't know. It just seems like it's too many delegates all at once. Why not space it out a little more? Really need Texas and California on the same day? Yeah. Right. So what else? Anderson Cooper made an ass of himself tonight by making a comment along with Andrew Yang, who's now a CNN contributor, which I don't really care for. I don't like this whole presidential candidate to TV commentator pipeline. It seems like kind of an easy way out. But Anderson Cooper said that the only reason, or he speculated, based on nothing, because he has no idea, but he decided to go on TV tonight and speculate that the only reason why Tulsi is still running is because she's angling for a Fox News job. First of all, Tulsi is a sitting member of Congress and will remain so at least until January of next year. So that's plenty of time for her to continue to do work in Congress. But why is it so mysterious to Anderson Cooper why Tulsi is running for president? She says why she's running every day. She's pretty clear about it. You might disagree with it. You might not think that it's valuable, but it's not like she keeps it under wraps. So this constant effort to sort of impute her with these nefarious objectives is just it's just total BS. Okay. Is she winning big margins in any of these states? No, she is not. Obviously. But like I've said many, many times, she is using the platform afforded to her by being an active presidential candidate to say things that no other candidate would dare say, such as her op-ed this week on the whole Russian interference issue, where she actually did a more forceful defense of Bernie than he's even done for himself. So that op-ed alone, at least in my mind, justifies her continued presence in the race. But she's also making statements and campaigning on issues that, were it not for her presence in the race, would get zero attention. And obviously she's been marginalized and excluded, so she can only get so much traction. But you can still get quite a bit of traction if you're an active presidential candidate. And who knows, maybe she'll get a delegate in American Samoa, which votes in a caucus on Super Tuesday. So it's just like, enough with this, these dark innuendos and insinuations about why she's in the race. If you want to know why she's in the race, ask her. Or even ask me. I can explain it to you. Let's see. So tonight's bad news for Mini Mike. As I tweeted earlier, a little birdie told me that the scenario that Bloomberg's campaign projected out for his viability was that Biden would drop out after Nevada because he just couldn't stand having done so poorly in the first three states. But it turned out that Biden didn't do catastrophically poorly in Nevada. He did get delegates, and he came in second place with around 20%, which wasn't that bad considering the poor performances in Iowa and New Hampshire, and the fact that Nevada was a caucus state, which is not really well suited to Biden. And then, according to this kind of fanciful Bloomberg projection, what was going to happen was that Tom Steyer was going to win South Carolina. And that would allow Bloomberg to swoop in on Super Tuesday as this unity consensus candidate who had done an astronomical ad buy beyond any precedent in American history across the entire country. And then he was going to, win Super Tuesday. So things haven't gone according to plan for Mike. And I don't really see any rationale why the people who want to stop Bernie would sort of gravitate toward Mike Bloomberg at this point rather than Joe Biden, who is in fact a Democrat, a lifelong loyal Democrat. I'm not saying that to praise him for that quality. I'm just noting it. And that's why Biden himself noted it in his victory speech, where he said, where he addressed Democrats across the country and said, if you want to vote for a Democrat, if you want a Democrat to be the nominee, Vote for me. The other guys in contention aren't. And in a way, he's right. Bernie's not really a Democrat. He caucuses with the Democrats. Yes, he's made a lot of inroads with the Democratic establishment, but fundamentally at his core, Bernie is not a Democrat. And that's part of his appeal. That's why a lot of people like him. They don't want him to be this sort of partisan, knee-jerk Democrat who spent his entire life and career just kind of climbing the career ladder within the party. So that's central to Bernie's resonance. Likewise, Bloomberg, not a Democrat. I was elected as mayor of New York City as a Republican and only pledged fealty to the Democratic Party in 2018 when he decided that his first sort of attempt to make an incursion into the party was to fund all these Democratic House candidates. And in his words, buy them off. Remember, he slipped up at the debate this week and admitted that he bought off members of the freshman class for the Democrats in the House. So there is some currency to that argument that Biden is making for himself. It might not be popular amongst you people in this live stream, might not be popular on Twitter or in the YouTube shows that you watch, but there are a lot of just normie Dems who say to themselves, you know what? I kind of do just want somebody who's a Democrat to be the nominee. Is that crazy? Again, I don't agree with that personally, but it's not about me personally. I've long ago accepted that my sentiments are not widely shared amongst the broad swath of the electorate. So it's just something to be cognizant of. Doodle boo when you back that up. You're a big fine woman when you back that ass up. Girl, you look good when you back that ass up. Tom Steyer's gone. I guess he backed that ass up. All right. I think that's basically all I have to say. Read the quick sort of reaction takeaway that I wrote. Dan says, fingers crossed for Bernie in the short term, Tulsi in the long. It's plausible. Amy says, please back that arse up. Twerk for Big Mama. You know what? I keep my word, and my word was if Tom Steyer sunk below 10%, I would in fact back that ass up. I would stick my AZZ into the computer screen so you all would get a firsthand look at the glory of my ass. But I'm simply not doing it because Tom Steyer, sadly, is hovering at 11% as we speak. So, oh well, maybe next time. Sparky says, when you hang out with Trump, tell him vote Tulsi. I do not hang out with Trump. I would like to. Sort of be interesting. That would be interesting, but I don't hang out with Donald Trump. Sorry. Let's see. Anything else? All right. That's it. Best wishes. Joe. He's got the Joe momentum. Riding with Biden. He's back, baby. Thank you to RunXX for the last minute super chat without even asking a question. That's the easiest money I ever made. Don't even have to pretend to respond to you because you didn't ask me to respond to anything. You just gave the money. Wow. You're like my little personal Bloomberg, just handing out money to corrupt me. All right, people. Thank you. Riding with Biden. Go, Joe, go. That'll do it. Farewell.